What's up, everybody? I'm Shane from Ferocious Fatherhood. Here we're doing our 30 for 30 campaign. My guest today, Jesse Jarvis, all the way from Canada, from Dare to Dad. Jesse, welcome to the show, man.
Pleasure to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So your organization is Dare to Dad. Before we get started, I kind of want you to talk about that a little bit, expand on it. What are you guys doing? Just go from there. Show is yours, sir.
Yeah, Dare to Dad was first a course, an idea that I had. What had happened to me is I had a career that I really loved, and I never had a plan B. I never had second thoughts about not being involved in it. And then over the course of just a few weeks, it became apparent that maybe they weren't as in love with me as I was with them. So it was just over and it was done. And so then I'm like, oh my gosh, like I never, it's like, what do I do? Right. And so I had the foresight and to be honest, I had no idea, no clue. Like it really sort of shook my world, shook my identity. So I start asking around just the people that I know and love, like, hey man, like, what do I do here? Like, can you please tell me, like, what am I good at? So I do that, and I'm hoping the answers come back like, I've never heard a great public speaker as you. I've never seen anyone lead a team. No one meets their objectives better. These were the answers I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. But that's not what I got. What I got from 5 guys too, and friends, was they all led with, well, you're a great dad. Mm-hmm. And so at first I was a little annoyed because I wanted something that had a tangible, maybe utility, and like,
you'd be a great president of a company.
Yeah. It was just as useful as that. Yeah, it felt. And so, but I had some time, so I let it sit with me, and rather than sort of recoil, because that was my initial feeling, and I think that's a common feeling amongst dads in general and guys that I meet, is no one's brave enough to say that they're doing a good job or a great job, unless you're Will Smith or whatever making a movie. But so I let it sit with me, and then as I did that, some of the books I was reading and things that came up, I was like, oh, like there's an opportunity here to create a course designed for essentially guys like me, guys who are probably doing okay and just need some goalposts and some help. You know, we take classes and we take coaching for everything else in our lives. You have a coach at the gym, you have a boss at work, and yet this super incredibly important thing that will impact the rest of your life, we just sort of take it as it is and go, all right, like, let's go. And so I felt, since people were already asking me occasional advice, and since it had been affirmed, I'm like, all right, well, maybe I got something to offer here. So, so I launched the course last year, and it's 6 weeks, and feedback's been pretty good. And that's where the brand came out of. It came out of the course. I was pretty, like I said, I was not in this world, this digital world at all. I was working with teenagers. Like I was just, trying to get kids to Six Flags and back over the course of a weekend. Like, wasn't really my, this was all new to me. And so then as I created the course, it was like, okay, well then I got to create a brand and all that stuff. And it's been incredible. Like I get to meet people like you and talk to other great dads. And the thing that's most fun is there's a taboo around talking about fatherhood. It's almost like talking about how much you make. Yeah. Those are 2 questions I feel like if people ask you, you're like, whoa, man, like, slow down.
Yeah, well, that's a little personal there. Let's start clamming up type of deal. Yeah.
Yeah, those are not comfortable. Yet money as well as fatherhood will define us for so much of our lives, and so much of our day-to-day thoughts are, affected by them. So that part of it, and engaging in sort of this taboo, that's not a great word, but engaging in this sort of hidden area has been really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. I have to say I'm the exact same way. I didn't really do social media before this. So just diving into something that makes me so uncomfortable and talking about something that, again, like you said, talking about fatherhood can be very uncomfortable. So just
Yeah.
doing that, man, the growth in my personal life outside of this has just been insane. Have you experienced that as well?
Well, there's a certain level of accountability once you put yourself forward as a thought leader in fatherhood.
Yeah.
there's oh yeah. I mean, in some cases, if you don't already feel bad enough, just tell people you're good at doing this thing, and then any sort of mistake that
They
you
will be
make,
more than happy to pick up on it. Yeah. Ain't that
yeah,
the truth?
yeah. Even this summer, I was just hanging out at the beach, and I forget what I did. And my buddy's like, "Hey man, do you want me to start a live for you right now?" I'm like, "Okay, just lay off." Like, no. It's like, we could go live with Dare to Dad right now. Like, no, come on, man. Like, it's 35 degrees out, or Celsius, 100.
Right. Yeah.
So, but that being said, that's part of the problem, is that, like, there's no perfect dads. There's just no one who's got it perfect. And what we all need moving forward is just community and accountability. And I've done that kind of stuff before, and know I need it in my own life, and feel like I have something to offer in that space as far as creating it and having it. So
yeah, that's awesome. You talked about like the expertise thing there. Like, so one of the first questions I started talking about ferocious fatherhood to other people, and they're like, "Well, why do you think you can do that?" I'm like, I don't know. I have no expertise. I mean, my son at the time was like 2. I was like,
yeah,
I don't know. But what I do know is this isn't there. I know that I'm not seeing this. And
yeah,
so I was like, I can just start talking. I can let the experts talk. I can sit there and listen. Then I get better, and we can put this out to everyone else. So yeah, I do think that's kind of a shame that we don't encourage each other as much as we could. So
yeah. Some guys get it. Like, maybe they're in a cool, they got some nice peers, and they all encourage each other, or I don't know, send their kids to Yale or whatever. But for normal people, yeah, finding the right guys and finding the community, that's part of it. Because we can't go to our dads anymore for advice the same way almost every other generation did. Like, I can't ask my dad questions about sexual orientation. I can't ask my dad questions about screen time. I can't ask my dad questions about so many issues that just were not relevant and didn't need to be relevant in the 80s, 90s.
And think how much things have changed since then.
Yeah, and I think this generation of fatherhood is the most alone a generation has been, in the sense of having to make up the rules so much more, right? It's like, I don't know about screen time, right? Until you tell another dad, it's like, yeah, you can't have your kid on an iPad for 6 hours. So like, oh really? Oh no, like there's
right.
It's hard to get good data on what's good in life, especially if you got young kids. There's just a whirlwind when they're younger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of like, man, I just gotta sleep. I just gotta, I just need a minute to myself. And like, and that's when I feel you're most vulnerable to those other habits. But that's usually when you go to, hopefully have someone in your world where you can check in and be like, hey man, what do you do when, do you have any range? And, what do you do when your kid's poops are pink? And you're like, oh man.
Yeah. You ask the most off the wall questions, like, been there. Yep.
And that's what's incredible, is so many of us have been there, but just no one, there's no space for it to be something that we talk about. And that's what's exciting about Dare to Dad, and being in this, talking to people like you, and being in this fatherhood realm, is just, the more that I'm in it, the more I realize how unique it is versus 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 80 years ago. It's just we're unique and have a whole different set of challenges presented to us than we did in the past, no matter how old your kids are. Like, I would say, even like if your kids are 20, 25, you just have no idea the world that they grew up in,
absolutely.
it's just the reality that most of them are going to be at home,
Mhm.
until they're about like 30, like just the opportunity,
Mhm.
and it's hard for, guys to maybe wrap their head around that, but, just the opportunity is not, it's just a different world. That's all. Maybe the
Yep.
opportunity is there, but the world is by and large changing. And so fatherhood there, has to change with it.
Yeah, and it's changing so quickly. I'm interested to see when my kids have kids, the problems that they'll encounter, because the problems they'll encounter, I'm not going to encounter. 'Cause, I mean, the
No.
times they'll change so much more between now and then. I mean, you're talking another 20 years, and times are going to change again.
Yeah, your son's going to be like, how often do you water your NFT farm? And you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, right, right.
Like, well, back in my day, let's see. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and so yeah, it'll rapidly change. But this digitization of us, I don't know if in 30 years it'll be that much. It'll just, as far as like, do you remember sending your first email or something like that? Or how, I don't know how old you are, but
Mhm.
do you have a memory of that?
I do. I remember. I'm 32, so I remember.
Okay.
I think we had internet, when I
Yeah,
was younger, but I mean, it was definitely way different.
yeah,
These type of conversations didn't happen. I mean,
totally.
yeah, so I do, and
Yeah. And so just like during our sort of growing up, right, it's gone from, hey, I'm going to download an image and it's going to take 5 minutes
mhm.
to yeah, encountering like this, and all the temptation that's there for our kids when they're on a
Oh
when they're
yeah,
on
absolutely.
screen in particular, right? Like I use the I heard somewhere, it's like anytime you open up one of those apps, you're up against $1 trillion industry fighting
Yeah.
for your attention.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. So in one way, don't feel bad. Like,
Hmm.
you may
Yeah.
not always win the battle against $1 trillion, but on the other case, it's like, but set up, what you need
Hmm.
in place in order to, be in control of your time, be in control of your thoughts and things like that. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Jesse, I want to start getting into some of this. So, what's kind of like your general background? What, like, kind of starting with your childhood? Was your father in your life? What was your childhood like growing up? How many kids you have? What ages they got? Or what ages
whew,
are they? I'm sorry.
yeah. Yeah, my name's Jesse Jarvis, like we did in the intro. I have 3 kids, 13, 10, and 8. One of my daughter's special needs and has epilepsy, so that is a little complication sometimes dealing with that. I grew up in the Fraser Valley, like Greater Vancouver area, Vancouver, BC, in Canada. Not in the mountains, down where it's flat, which is kind of funny. But yeah, we growing up, it's just basically suburbia where I grew up, and my old man's just a classic like provider, in the sense of like up at 5, out the door, home by 3, nap by 3:45. Like his whole rhythm and life rhythm was there while he provided. And then my mom on the other side, looked after everything. It seemed like everything else,
Hmm.
by and large. And so, he was there when something broke down on my car, or he was there when I needed him, certainly. But yeah, just a reliability and a provider. An old school throwback kind of dad.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he was pretty involved in your life. So with that, what are some like of the major lessons that you learned from him, and how did you learn them?
Well, that's where creating Dare to Dad becomes so interesting, at least in my opinion, is that, part of my examination of fatherhood and my own life, like the career I had worked before this was working with teenagers, where and just normal kids, right? Like I said, just trying to get them to Six Flags or get them to camp in the summer, and hanging out with teenagers a lot. And such a weird job in hindsight. Like you have to try and explain it to people at parties, and they're like, "You do what? With what?" I'm like, it's like, yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I'm sorry. Like I just, and so when I left that job, like, all my identity goes. And so I started looking at myself and how I grew up. And that my dad, the provider that I'm talking about, even though he was there, he was amazing, when I was 10, I realized I don't realize, my mom takes me aside and says, this is not your biological dad. This
Oh,
is,
wow. Okay.
and so she had this metaphor that she used to describe it. And so that was obviously a super important day growing up, but it actually helped because there wasn't a lot of crossover with my dad, right? He'd be like, let's go fish. And I'm like, let's go to the mall. And he'd be like, I really want to hunt. And I'm like, I really want to play soccer. And he'd be like, I'm going to watch Home Improvement. And like, I'm going to watch Seinfeld. Like there just was not many things that lined up. And so to find out that what actually was quite, in a sense, relieving. And then in another sense, these are important moments in your life looking back. And so my story and my journey is this fatherless journey where, I grew up without my biological dad and someone who, resonates with all the things that I love. And so I spend most of my life doing that for others. And that was a lot of what I did in my last job, was like, even though these guys have good parents in some cases, right? It's like I fill in that gap and fill it in. And it wasn't until I left the job, it's like, oh, okay, well, that was all it was like, I had this subconscious belief that everyone else needs this male role model that I didn't get growing up. And I just turned 40. So, I spent most of my 20s and 30s, trying to fill that for other people growing up. And that's why Dare to Dad feels like such a nice extension of that, because fatherlessness is still a great part of, I think, my own story and my own journey, just in, examining who I am and what makes me me. What makes me take on these weird jobs to explain to parties. Dare to Dad isn't that much easier to explain. They're like, okay, I see you on Instagram now and you're 40. It's like, I know.
Yeah. So when I first started Ferocious Fatherhood, that was something I struggled being able to explain to people. Hey, I'm really trying to advocate for fathers here.
Yeah.
And it was something that they're like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Like, oh, okay, all right. Well, now I really have to develop my way of explaining what I do to people. So that's pretty funny that you bring that up. So with you wanting to influence, other children and other fathers, did you have that influence from someone else who was maybe outside of your family, maybe a coach or something like that?
Of course. Well, yeah, if it's not there, you look for it.
Yeah,
right.
So,
like
absolutely.
The human need for it is insatiable. Right. And so even if you have a great dad, there's still other guys you're going to need to fill in certain gaps that you have. And so I feel like I had a larger gap. And so, of course. And I got extraordinarily fortunate in the sense that there was the pastor of our church was incredibly supportive to me growing up, and taught me how to lead worship and how to perform and how to do these things, stuff like that I did all through my 20s and 30s, like performed all over North America. And that started with this one guy. And then all throughout my life, I thought it was normal to like hit up 60-year-old business owners or 60-year-old guys that I admire and be like, hey, you want to go get coffee? Like, apparently that's not fully normal, but yeah.
I'll say I never did that, but that's really awesome that you had that. I mean, I wish my father was very heavily involved in my life, and I still wish I would have had more positive male role models just there.
Yeah, because there's other gaps, right? Where it's like, oh, I wish I could have learned maybe how to manage money, or maybe I could have learned, right? Like there's just gaps that our dads will leave with us. And so I can shout him out, but Grady, that'd be the first guy, Pastor Grady from back in, he'd be the first one. And if you look at the trajectory of your life, the fact that he was there during that time is incredibly important, because that's, how I end up probably working with teenagers and doing that kind of stuff. And obviously gave me the confidence to perform in front of other people, right? Stuff that I wasn't totally getting at home, but still had this like performer nature. No, all throughout my life, there's always been people that come there, that come and fill that, partly because I maybe seek them out, but then partly I feel like I've been very, very fortunate.
That's awesome. I think one of the biggest ones for me was my soccer coaches. I mean,
Yeah.
I can count numerous lessons that I learned from them. Hey, you're going to be on time to practice. If not, go start running. So being on time.
I'm sorry, I don't know very much about America, but why are you playing soccer down in?
That's what I grew up playing. I love it. Play it all the time.
Yeah, I know. That was it for me. That soccer, same way. I had one coach in particular that stands out as like believes in you to the point where you're like, okay, I get it, like, right. And but that's, I think about him often because he was this guy that I respected, admired, had a decent resume that really believed in me and really gave me confidence. And I actually coached soccer here in Cranbrook, and awesome. But under that same philosophy, like I'm not the let's win at all cost. I'm here again under that sort of fatherlessness. Like I'm here to sort of, gently nudge. I saw this. There's this great clip of Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg talking.
Okay, yeah, those guys are great together.
And they both coach soccer. And Mark Wahlberg's like, you got to be on time and you got to work out. And then they're like, yeah, Will Ferrell, you coach too, right? And he's like, yeah, but like you could just tell the philosophy is totally different, right? Like, way to go, guys, you're all doing great.
Right. We're losing 14-0. Good job, though.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, I'm more of a Will Ferrell coach than a Mark Wahlberg coach. Still got results, but that was my philosophy. Yeah,
that's awesome. I can remember one of the biggest things I learned from my soccer coach was when the other coaches would start, jawing with him and getting in his ear, he just simply turn around and he'd walk over here and he'd coach from this side. He's like, I don't have to get involved with this. I can come over here, be just as effective with my team. I'm going to focus on what I need to focus on. I'm focusing on this idiot over here who's just running his mouth. That was one of the biggest things I've learned from
That's
my
awesome.
soccer coach.
That's awesome. And that'd be one area too where I get pretty upset is when I see sort of coaches behaving badly, right? Because you're right. The same way you learn that from your coach, you learn it the other way. And I think you see it sometimes. You're coaching or playing with other kids and you're like, dude, like this is not acceptable. But a lot of times, they get it from their coach. We were playing one tournament. The coach kicked the ball away from one of our players, went to pick it up for a throw-in. I'm like, what are you doing, man?
Like, why?
What? And he didn't get carded for it, which bothered me. But then also it's like, but there's just the again, like just the philosophy, like they're watching us, man. They're watching us, and that comes back even to fatherhood and why getting in control of your day to day is so critical. They're watching us, and man, if your kids, like I have a teenager now, as they start getting older, it's just like, oh my gosh, like
the things that they pick up, and they pick it up early. I got a 4-year-old. I guess at the time he was 3, where I was driving in the parking garage and I turned the corner and there was a car right there and we almost hit. I said something I shouldn't have. He looked right at me and goes, "Oh, Daddy," and he repeated it. Got it. That changes. Right. I got to change that. So they really are sponges. They pick up everything from every influence, whether it's your coach or your dad, whatever.
Totally. Yeah. And in the day to day, if you're alone, like if you work online and you don't have a lot of accountability, it's so easy to go, it's no big deal. Like it'll be okay. Yeah. And the discipline and the to stay on top of it, I think is something that, if you invest in it now with say Dare to Dad or anything, you will look back and just be so thankful. That's like, I can't, like, I'm so glad I took the time before it was urgent, because man, you start meeting other guys. I know a guy who had to take 3 months off of his job because his daughter, suffered an eating disorder. And so it's like, you didn't make the time, growing up, but then all of a sudden it's like, you eventually have to make the time, right? Like, had to take 3 months off, and certainly don't wish that on anyone, but that's why these, day to day investing in your kids and showing them just as best you can how to live and how to behave is so important. And one of the things I love about Dare to Dad and this world of I don't know what you call it, but anyways, we're in it.
The fatherhood world. Yeah.
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 So you talked about, just being involved. What are some of the other core values that you incorporate into your fathering style?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's really important to me is just controlling sort of the temperature in the home, like,
Yeah.
and that's probably where I put just so much effort and energy, is just that this space is the safe space,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
And it's work. It's work to
Hmm.
be like that. So, but that'd be where I start, is just doing whatever I can to create a safe space, and being on the brothers and sisters. It's like, nope, we don't talk like that, right? Like,
Hmm.
that's not how, like, in this, especially around where I find talking a lot is anytime there's creating, right? So especially like if you made something, it's the best thing ever,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's just no, like, this space has got to be safe. So if you made something, 5-second video, painting, new Pokemon, whatever it is, it's the best thing ever, because I want this home to be a space where you feel like you can, you're safe to create. And then another value would be that I participate, like I coach. I will listen to 10-minute rants about
Hmm.
Pokemon, and I will watch some of the things that they watch, and without judgment, I'll play video games with them sometimes, even though I lose and it's really embarrassing. I think there's certainly space for the dad to lead and space for him to show the way, but it's incredibly important to remember what it was like to be a kid.
Hmm. Yeah, I do agree with that.
And I fully remember, my dad, as great as he was, dismissing a lot of the things that I found interesting, right?
Hmm.
And that sticks with you. Sometimes you maybe just don't pursue it, or you double down. You're like, well, screw you, then I'm going to be
Yeah.
the best
Right.
ever, this thing. But participating in my kids' lives is just something really important. So do my best to try and be at school, try to coach, little things like walk, pick them up at the door, little moments and spaces where I can be in their world and in their life.
Hmm. It's really interesting. Pretty much everybody that I've talked to, they've all kind of say those little things are the things that matter. I've yet to hear someone be like, "Oh yeah, well, every single summer we go to Disney, or every single summer, I buy him another dog, or things like that." And I think that's one of the biggest things. Those little moments. That's what makes or break any relationship, whether it's the relationship with yourself, your wife, your friends, your son, your daughter, whatever. Those are the most important parts of any sort of relationship. I don't know if you agree with that, but man, I really focus on those little parts more than the big ones.
Yeah, like one or two stick out to you. What are you thinking when you say little? Like where I was talking about,
So
like walking to the door, or
yeah, so for like in our household, dinners, when we
yeah,
sit down to dinners, we our phones are not right there at the table.
yeah,
I'll turn it up and I'll put it on, away in case there's an emergency, whatever. But man, I'm not getting up. I'm not texting. We don't have any TVs on. Like little things like that. That to me, especially like me growing up, I mean, those were way more important to me than.
yeah,
I mean, we went to Disney and I loved it, but I remember the little things we did at Disney more than meeting Mickey. I remember playing in a pool with my brother, having a cannonball competition. That was way more important, way more fun to me than being at Disney itself.
yeah, man. That's a great perspective. And so, yeah, we put effort into these large trips, or these large sort of acts. And the kids, I mean, they'll look back at the pictures and be really thankful. Be like, oh,
Hmm.
sweet, I met Winnie the Pooh. That's amazing. But they will only remember how they felt during the trip, like,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
so, yeah, that's I'm not surprised that that's been what's come back from different
Yeah.
dads. And just to hammer that home, eating dinner together is statistically shown just to like vastly improve
Hmm.
life. Hey, like it's one of the main things that you can do as a family is
Yeah.
eat your dinner together and a non-distracted dinner. Do you have like topics of discussion or anything like that? You go that far yet or too young?
Not really. So right now, I got a 4-year-old who loves dinosaurs. So right now we
Yeah.
talk about dinosaurs and, oh, hey, look, tonight we'll play dinosaurs and we'll learn this dinosaur and that dinosaur. And did you hear about this dinosaur? And yeah, so that's one of the biggest things that we do with him. My other
Yeah.
one's a little too young. She's about 6 weeks. So she's
6 weeks, man.
yeah, man, she can't quite do that with her. But like even still, when we have dinner, I'll sit there, I'll hold her with one arm, eat with the other.
Yeah.
So like things like that, I think are way more important.
They are. The dinner, from what I've read, dinner together, a non-distracted dinner together will pay incredible dividends. And the one that's just as high is reading together.
Yeah, that's another big
So we
one.
talk about little things. Anyone listening to this, that's where you can start.
Yeah,
Fight
absolutely.
for dinner together and read together, either as a family or at night. Like it's nice. It's a nice part of like maybe a bedtime routine as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The reading is something that we need to incorporate more in our household. Like I'll read. I make it a point. I read 10 pages every day. I don't care how tired I am, whatever, I do it. And it's something that I need to incorporate. I'll tell you, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but when I saw those two statistics about reading and about having dinner with your kids, it blew my mind. Like this dinner, it was in like the 80% or something. I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. We're definitely incorporating this.
Yeah. So there's a couple little things, people listening. When we say little things, we're talking about not being on your phone and eating in front of the TV, which is something most people can change. Like, it sucks maybe if you're tired, but worth the minimal effort there. And then, 5 minutes of reading at bedtime. Get them to pick a story, even if and you can start that super young, 6 weeks too young, but like, 6 months. So, right. Just get the book in front of them. Let them turn the pages. Let them like, you can get ones with like where they feel like little feathers and like different textures on the book and stuff. It's like,
and the books with young ones, 6 months, it's so incredible. Like you just open a page and it just says yellow. Okay, there's yellow, blue. Like, how simple is that? And what a great way to learn, and what a great person to learn from. You learn from your father teaching your kids. That's awesome.
Yeah. It sounds like you already read too, right? So it's even just I think even just the habit, and I do this one where I just like read in front of them. So like, rather than be on my phone, I just have a book that I'm reading and I read it sort of. I don't go to like a cave and hide, but like I like to read it out in the open just to sort of normalize it as well, right? It's like
absolutely cool. So we talked kind of about solutions, but kind of what are like some of the harder problems that you faced as a father growing up?
Yeah, well, I have a teenager now, so that's presenting not issues because I've been reading and each kid is different. So so I'm just like prepared for what's coming up with this sort of teenage attitude and mindset. But we've moved, and so it's our first time doing that with all the kids in school, and so that's got me incredibly nervous. And working overtime to get them comfortable and feeling safe and acclimatized in their new school and their new environment. And so it's worked out okay so far for two of them. But there's one that's 2 weeks in Canada, anyways, 2 weeks into school, and just being really patient and just keep affirming him. Now, man, it's gonna be okay, right? Like everyone's gonna come around and. Just takes a little while. And so, and in these, if your kid is scared, they mostly just want to be listened to. So that's been the challenge for me lately, is not to be dispensing advice. But when they're nervous, I do two things. I share from my own life because I moved a couple times. So I've been sharing stories about how I screwed that up, trying to stand out in the new school and ended up in the office, the principal's office over and over again. So I share stories from my own life, which build empathy. And then the second one is if I can get them talking, which isn't always easy, then I shut up and I just
Mhm.
smile and nod and let them get it out. Cause I feel like, it can be a long day if you're feeling alone in school. So like, just, for me, just want to give space for them to let it out. But that's what I'm going through now. If we talk again and we can check in, let you know how it went. But
Yeah, please do. I love to hear how you overcome that.
yeah.
So we talked a little bit about how to be actively engaged with children. Do you think that fathers not being actively engaged is one of the biggest problems that fathers do, or the biggest errors that fathers make?
I don't know. Judging fathers, not my space at all, man. Because I think everyone's story is so complicated when it gets into your dad and your family
Mhm.
and your kids and stuff. So I mean, every dad's making mistakes.
Yeah.
The good dads own up to their mistakes in a good way.
Mhm.
Admit they were wrong, say they're sorry, ask forgiveness, and move on. Um, and so because that to me is the only habit that matters, because there's just too much stuff that's going to be coming at you while your kids are growing up, where you're going to
Mhm.
be able to be perfect. And so what I want to model for my kids is how to make mistakes but recover and be able to move on in relationship and heal things and keep trust
Mhm.
and do that. So that'd be the main space, is you're not gonna be perfect. In fact, you can be the furthest from perfect ever. You can be,
Mhm.
you can be as far away as you want at any point. A man can choose to re-engage
Mhm.
and put them forward, and when they want to, sure, you can come take my course. So
And to me, I think it's really cool how, when you want to correct that course, it doesn't take much to correct that. I was talking with Luke Ross the other day from Dad's Digging Deeper,
Mm,
and he was telling me, he's like, the research he did, he says it takes 9 minutes. That's it. 9 minutes daily of being actively involved with your kid for, that switch to go off and you to become an influence in their life. 9 minutes, man. That's
that's
nothing.
all.
Like that's a shower. You're sitting there. I'm sitting there showering my son. In 10 minutes in there, man, we can hit that so easily. So I think it's so cool that while we can drift away pretty easily, you can also come back very, very, very easily.
Yeah. Yeah. As awful as you're feeling or as distant as you're feeling, that's great. You're never more than 9 minutes away from making it better. And yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you got to stack, a few months of 9 minutes in a row, but
Hmm.
either day one or one day.
Yep. Absolutely. Cool, Jesse. Well, hey, man, I loved having you on here. I love talking to you. I want to get one last piece of advice that you have for fathers, maybe anything we haven't covered yet. What you got, Jesse, man? Show's yours.
Oh, well, we covered it. It can't be said
Yeah.
enough. Eat dinner and read to your kids. Eat dinner together and read to your kids.
Yeah, man, I cannot agree with that anymore. I mean, there's your 9 minutes right there. You do that, you got easily an hour, easily between dinner and reading. Man, that's crazy.
If you got young boys, might be hard pressed to get 3 minutes out of reading sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, but then you can do where you just sit down, you just have your book open.
See? Yeah,
They
but
want
those two things,
oh,
coming back,
yeah,
yeah, those are the little things.
yeah, that's awesome, Jesse, man. Thanks for being on here. Please let everyone know how they can get a hold of you. Um, yeah, give a little spiel for yourself, man.
Definitely. The main thing is I have my Facebook groups. You can join. I'm live on there all the time. And anytime I see a space in my life where I think I'm doing something right, I share it. So it may not be very sexy, but last week I shared just a Word doc of like how to make lunches and like what I do
Oh wow,
to
okay.
make lunches all the day. So you could just look at it and be like, okay, one here, one here, one here, one here. And it's not like, these super parents where it's like, I only give my kid quinoa based muffins. It's like, no, this is the real life.
Yeah.
And we got, I don't have 4 hours to make lunches. So yeah, if you join, the group's free, you can join that and get to know me a little bit better, but also I'm doing whatever I can to make your life easier as a dad in there.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jesse, man. I really appreciate you being here all the way from Canada, man. I love it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
Cheers.